a vivir en la semi-esclavitud, en las restricciones y en la no participación de la democracia de nuestros estados. En ese sentido, nosotros a veces vemos con preocupación cómo se nos quieren dar a los pueblos indígenas derechos humanos de segunda categoría, cuando los derechos humanos son inalienables, inherentes, y los estados deben protegerlos. Como los que nos deben proteger a nosotros son precisamente los que nos limitan, violan nuestros derechos humanos y no nos permiten realmente vivir en armonía dentro de nuestros estados.
The victims of human rights abuses have hardly any way to get their plight known at the international level because they are poor, they are isolated, they are socially excluded, discriminated against, marginalized. They live somewhere in the jungles or somewhere in the swamps or in the mountains and have no access to lawyers or even to NGOs, and certainly not to the system of justice and the government, much less to international organizations. Though in some countries we have, for example, the High Commissioner for Refugees is working, or UNICEF is working at the local level to help people and so forth, yet very often the complaints and the plight and the problems of certain indigenous peoples never get across.
On est beaucoup de problèmes particuliers que certains autochtones dans le monde entier, parce que nous, on n'a pas l'accès à l'eau même. On n'a pas l'accès à la santé, on n'a pas l'accès à l'éducation.
Our girls not to be illiterate like us. We want them to be educated.
O bilíngue é mais melhor do que indo só do branco. Tem que ser bilíngue.
Today, there are some 370 million indigenous peoples living in more than 70 countries, sometimes as majorities, but more often as minorities.
I am indigenous to this turtle island. Our teachings tell us that the Creator placed us here as caretakers of the land, the animals, all living things, that we were placed here with a responsibility.
We believe that our communities have evolved in certain ecosystems. We live with the land, we work with the land, and we care for the land.
La flora y la fauna más rica que se encuentra en estos momentos en el planeta está en los territorios indígenas. Y eso porque hemos sido guardianes de esto toda una vida y queremos que esto siga sirviendo para la humanidad, pero sin destruirlo.
If you put a map of where the indigenous peoples are and where the biodiversity hotspots are, you will find out that there is a perfect match. And it is not an accident. They have taken care of their environment for centuries. And they will continue to do so as long as there is no external agent, whether it's a multinational or a state government, that tries to appropriate their territory.
La situación de nuestros pueblos es muy diferente desde el punto de vista educativo, quizás, de salud, pero hay un eje común entre nuestros pueblos que nos afecta negativamente. Vivimos dentro de un sistema económico mundial que muchas veces nuestros hermanos no están preparados para soportar los cambios econômicos em el mundo.
Aqui, ó, nós moramos aqui. Pra cá tudo derrubado, tudo derrubado. O único lugar só é aqui, ó.
Aqui é tudo plantação de soja, ó.
Só soja, só até em outra cidade.
Nós não queremos desenvolvimento, nós queremos uma sustentabilidade que garanta pra gente a sobrevivência digna dentro das nossas terras.
Indigenous peoples want to be able to choose their mode of development. They want to be able to, if they wish, integrate partly to the mainstream development efforts, or partly keep their own development systems, or simply completely pursue their own development without integrating. Lands and natural resources are not just economic means for indigenous peoples. They are means of them continuing as peoples, as cultures, as part of the cultural diversity and richness of our world. For instance, we estimate that out of the approximately 6,000 languages spoken in the world today, 4,000 are spoken by indigenous peoples. And if one looks at the map of the world, one sees that the linguistic diversity in our world coincides with the biodiversity of our world. So we have to think of what it means. Indigenous issues, indigenous peoples are of global interest. We are all together in this as humanity, because by protecting and being together with indigenous peoples, we are protecting the cultural human heritage and the biodiversity of our world.
More and more governments realize this, that included in the right of culture, they must pay attention to the land. I foresee that this is the problem that we will be facing, but it is also the key. If we can't solve this problem, we will have the conflicts going on.
The land is the blood, is our blood. We cannot live, nobody can accept live his blood like that, or his life like that. No.
One of the important things is to try to find a way to build confidence between the indigenous and the non-indigenous sectors in every multinational, multi-ethnic, or multilingual society. And one would be very important step on in this regard, namely to create an efficient mechanism at home in which the indigenous peoples would be represented in terms of equality with the non-indigenous section of the society.
The main problem facing indigenous peoples within their homelands is the right to exist as peoples. As peoples, they would have that opportunity or the